So we're Unitarian Universalists. What does the Hanukkah story have to do with us? It's frankly a David and Goliath story with this small, tiny army from this relatively insignificant people taking on this army of an empire and winning. It makes for a great movie or a great novel. It's a story of a people who believe that they have every reason to never give up hope because their God is looking out for them. It's a story of the miracle of the oil lasting far longer than they ever expected. And then that is, of course, perceived as proof that God is with them. Now, Unitarian Universalists, okay, we don't seem to be feeling oppressed by an empire at the moment. In fact, if anything, we live in the empire. We don't generally believe in miracles of the type that they encountered anymore, but we do have hope. So in my thinking as I was preparing for this, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray's Hanukkah greeting really tells us why this story is relevant. And I want to unpack that a little bit briefly as my homily today. So her very first statement in her greeting was, even when challenges seem insurmountable, hope is always present. Hope is always present, even when challenges seem insurmountable. Well, clearly, the Jewish people have a long, long history of resilience. In spite of unbelievable challenges, which often would have utterly destroyed other cultures and did, they never gave up hope. They always came back. Jewish scripture, in fact, is filled with stories of overcoming suffering because they remained true to who they were and what they believed. Hanukkah is a celebration of never giving up hope, a celebration of acting bravely to create the change. And it's a celebration of a confirmation that somehow in the end, God or the universe will support their efforts. Well, in our case, even though we're not oppressed by the Greeks, we do have some things going on, right? We have this pandemic that's raging on, and it's affecting us in many ways. Spiritually is obviously, as your minister, the one I think of first. This continued forced separation. This week marks 9 months since we've been together physically in our fellowship buildings, except for the few folks that still come to Open Circle because it's the best way that they can connect. But that just takes a toll on us spiritually. We can't physically see each other and be with each other. Psychologically, we're missing the physical presence, especially of vulnerable loved ones that we know it's not a good idea to go near them because it has bad consequences. And then it got worse. This week, we all got snow and ice. It's cold out, it's windy. Can't even go outside for long periods. It was one thing last summer when it was warm that we could at least socially distance and be with each other. Obviously, it's the health concerns, avoiding illness and even death, because it's one of these pandemics where you never quite know exactly who's going to be taken ill. But I think above all that we all see is the economic impact. There's all these small stores and restaurants and bars that are closing or are shuttered up for a while, and unemployment, and we don't really know how this is going to end from an economic perspective. But through all of this, we do have hope. As Reverend Frederick Gray said, we do have hope. In this case, it's probably technology is where we base our hope. It offers a light at the end of the long, dark tunnel after the big dark night. Vaccinations started being available this week. And we know that they're going to be available around the world, and maybe within 6 months, everyone will be vaccinated or enough sufficiently that life can return back to a physical presence, if not normal. Video conferencing technology. Think about that. You're on this call this morning. 9 months ago, had you ever even heard of Zoom? And would you have even tried it? And here you all are. I gave you speed bumps this morning to try to get into this call. You figured it out. You all got here, and we're getting very comfortable with this mode of communicating with one another. Technology has given us a lot of hope that we can be resilient and survive this. So we know we will be together again eventually, physically and virtually, and stronger than ever because of it. Well, the other thing hitting us, the big challenge, of course, is the unprecedented political unrest. It's giving us this sense of insecurity and instability. There's extreme partisanship over patriotism, individuals or parties first over country, and this stoking of this culture of extremism and violence. I mean, a lot of that had to have been similar to what the Jews faced at the time of the Greeks. We had voter suppression, constant posturing and bullying, and now this refusal to accept a legitimate democratic process. But again, there's hope. We all know this. January 20th offers a light of hope at the end of a long tunnel and a sunrise after a long, long night. We've seen it. Every single lawsuit, frivolous lawsuit, has been denied in every court in the land. And this week, the Supreme Court didn't even want to hear it, right? So there's probably going to be a few more unexpected bumps along the way, but I do believe we can have hope that stability of some sort will begin to return. Healing and rebuilding will begin. There seems to be still a broad faith in American democracy despite all of its shortcomings. Well, Reverend Frederick Gray goes on to say, a small group of faithful, committed people really can create change. So Hanukkah celebrates the victory over the Maccabees over Antiochus. The Maccabees were tremendously outnumbered by the armies of the Greek Empire, yet they prevailed. And then they changed the path of their future by reclaiming the temple. They actually had about 100 years of national statehood for a while. Instead of being assimilated into the Greek culture, they were able to hold on to their religious traditions and culture. I think similarly, our fellowships have demonstrated resilience. I know there are some who can't or don't wish to join via Zoom, but yet they've been replaced by others that we haven't heard from for years because they moved away, or maybe they are in the hospital and can't physically get to us, or newcomers have joined us in this new way of coming together. We've learned new ways of doing things and have changed. And we are creating change in our communities. We all know that many of our members and friends are leaders in each of our communities. And I think we come together weekly in this environment as a faith community to remind us why we struggle and to be supported and loved. And then we go out into the world knowing our fellowship has our back as we try to live out our radically optimistic principles in society at large. And our third statement was, faith is what calls us to move forward in love and hope, even when we can't know how it will all turn out. Well, that is the definition of faith, not knowing. The Jews at the time of the great Greek Empire had no way of knowing they would prevail, but their faith kept the flame alive. We will never see the fulfillment of our work for justice, equity, compassion, and religious freedom prevail in our lifetime, but we continue, supported by the love and hope we share with each other. So to cite the phrase first penned by a Unitarian minister in the mid-19th century, minister and abolitionist Theodore Parker, who was then quoted by President Abraham Lincoln, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and President Obama, I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice. Beloveds, this is the same hope and resilience we share with the Jewish celebration of Hanukkah. Together we are stronger. Together we proudly proclaim our religious freedom. And together we hope and believe in changing the world for the better. May we continue to be resilient, and happy Hanukkah to you all.